going to be trying to predict the entire WrestleMania 41 match card. And yes, I understand that this is ridiculously early. It's an entire year in advance, so early that WrestleMania 41 doesn't even have a location yet. But that's the point, because this is a series that will last an entire year, as we're going to try to predict the WrestleMania 41 match card 12 months in advance, 6 months in advance, and 3 months in advance. And when we're closer to WrestleMania, we'll look back on these old videos and see how good or bad my old predictions were. Spoiler alert, these are probably not going to be anywhere near close to the actual match card, but we're going to try. As always, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications. If you're a wrestling fan, I know you're going to fall in love with this YouTube channel because we always upload daily wrestling content. All right, let's jump into it. Let's start off with the match for the WWE Women's World Championship between what I think is going to be the champion Rhea Ripley taking on Bianca Belair. Do I think that Rhea Ripley is going to hold all the way through to next year's WrestleMania? I don't know, but it wouldn't be out of the norm at this point, with Triple H loving his long title reigns. For Rhea Ripley to hold the championship for 2 years, it isn't entirely unrealistic. We've already had Gunther basically do the same thing, and of course Roman Reigns hold for over 1,000 days. And Rhea Ripley in her own right has been an incredibly dominant champion, to the point where she fits the mold of this type of dominant champion that could realistically hold that gold all the way through to next year's WrestleMania. Do I love it? I mean, I don't know. I think for me, the jury's still out as to whether or not I really like these long title reigns, but the evidence is there. The evidence supports the fact that Rhea Ripley could very well still be champion by then. So let's pretend that Rhea Ripley is still champion by then. We need to look at who would be a genuine threat to a dominant title reign such as Rhea Ripley's, that at that point would have lasted for over 2 years. And I think the best answer here is actually Bianca Belair. Bianca Belair and Rhea Ripley at their primes have not had any sort of matches or feuds on the main roster yet. They've done a really good job of keeping these two completely apart, whether it's apart because of like storylines that they're in, or physically apart by having one on SmackDown and one on Raw. But we do have the draft looming, where we could see potentially Bianca Belair getting moved over to Monday Night Raw, and we have seen the WWE be able to keep Rhea Ripley away from other top megastars on Monday Night Raw for the sake of building something for WrestleMania, like they did with Becky Lynch, where they kept them away forever until it was time to actually hype up their match for WrestleMania. So even if Bianca Belair does get drafted to Raw, we don't need to immediately have a feud between Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair. In fact, I really believe that this is such a big match, big money match in the women's division, that the best place to do it is WrestleMania. And this would easily be the biggest marquee match from the women's side of things, and it would truly, really represent a new era, as it wouldn't have any of the 4 horsewomen. I really don't need to sell this too much. Like, these are 2 of the biggest stars in the WWE that haven't really crossed paths when they've both been one of the biggest stars in the WWE. They were both cover athletes for WWE 2K24. It's a perfect matchup, and one of those few money matches still left for Bianca Belair and for Rhea Ripley. This has to happen at some point, I would imagine within the next calendar year, so WrestleMania is a perfect place. Let's stick with the women and let's look at the now versus the future, and Tiffany Stratton going up against Charlotte Flair for the WWE Women's Championship. Now, I do have this match being for the WWE Women's Championship, but I don't know who would go in as the champion. I would presume maybe somebody like Tiffany Stratton goes in as the champion, and somehow Charlotte, maybe through an elimination chamber, some sort of #1 contendership tournament, she ends up winning a #1 contendership opportunity against Tiffany Stratton at WrestleMania. The reason why I like this matchup, it's because it is a dream match, but it's also very representative of what the WWE has been trying to do over the last couple of months. It's very representative of the message that the WWE has been trying to portray, which is that we are in a new era. And Tiffany Stratton is a bona fide representation of this new era of WWE, and Charlotte Flair is the representation of the former guard. So much how we've had Rhea Ripley become a megastar in the WWE with her beating Charlotte and Becky Lynch back-to-back WrestleManias, I could see us doing this exact same trend with somebody like Tiffany Stratton, where the first person that she beats at WrestleMania, similar to Rhea Ripley, is going to be Charlotte Flair, to help again elevate her status as a top contender in the future of the WWE Women's division. Plus, this match is going to be nutty. Like, this actually would be so incredibly good. I would pay good money to see Tiffany Stratton versus Charlotte Flair. In my eyes, this is a WrestleMania dream match. And Charlotte is going to have a marquee match at WrestleMania. We know this. It's Charlotte. So long as she's not injured, she's going to have a major play in the actual show. And since I've already got Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair all tied up in a different matchup, I think that this is a great great next matchup for Charlotte Flair to help again elevate yet another young talent like she did with Rhea Ripley, this time with Tiffany Stratton. All right, this one's a bit of a dream match for me, okay? All right, I know this is crazy, but I don't think it's that crazy to think that we could potentially get Logan Paul versus John Cena for the United States Championship. Yes, this would be a world where Logan Paul goes into back-to-back WrestleManias as the United States champion, but he doesn't have to hold it all the way through. It's possible that he loses it along the way and gains it back before WrestleMania to potentially set up this match. In the past, I would have told you that John Cena probably wants nothing to do with Logan Paul, but we did see John Cena in a pretty recent episode of the Impulsive podcast, so clearly they've got a good enough relationship to work at the very least out of WWE. And some might say that this is just too big of a match for Logan Paul, but he did just have a WrestleMania match that involved Randy Orton, and Randy Orton is like on the same level as John Cena when it comes to superstardom. And I know that the WWE continues to see long-term potential in Logan Paul. On top of that, Logan Paul is of course a money driver, not only with his presence in the ring and on screen, but also as being one of the principal owners of Prime. So I'm sure the WWE would be happy to put Logan Paul in such a marquee spot at WrestleMania with John Cena. Plus, I would just love to see this. Dude, the back and forth between these two, whether it's on podcasts, whether it's promo battles, would be absolutely phenomenal. I would love to see this. This also doesn't have to be for the United States Championship. Maybe Logan Paul does lose it somewhere along the way, and this is just a big money match, kind of like how they did Seth Rollins versus Logan Paul at WrestleMania 39. This is big enough where it doesn't need gold. The United States Championship just might work in this situation because it is John Cena, who is known as the greatest United States champion in the history of the WWE. But this might also just be my childish bliss wanting this match because this is freaking awesome. Oi, you want more wrestling content, bruh? Because we've got more wrestling content over on Patreon, patreon.com/SantiZap, where nearly 900 of you are already getting the Raw reviews, the SmackDown reviews, the Wrestling is Cool podcast 3 days earlier than everywhere else. There's already an episode up there that's been up there on Patreon for a couple days that you haven't seen yet on free feeds, and the Raw After Mania review is there, and every single review of Raw and SmackDown will be there as well. So just go check it out. Patreon.com/SantiZap. The link will be the top link in the description or the link in the pinned comment. All right, done. Back to the video. Next up, I have Gunther taking on Elia Dragonov. I have it here maybe for the Intercontinental Championship, but again, this is not a match that needs any sort of title whatsoever. On top of that, it's hard to find a render of Gunther that doesn't have the Intercontinental Championship because he was Intercontinental Champion for so damn long. But if the WWE simply just wants to put on a match of the year, match of the decade, match of the century candidate, they don't really need to look too much farther down than this right here. Gunther versus Elia Dragonov would be easily the best match of this entire show when it comes to in-ring prowess. They're already hinting at Elia Dragonov being called up from NXT to the main roster, so this isn't too far in terms of degrees of separation from actually happening. It's just a matter as to whether the WWE wants to do this at a big show like WrestleMania or at a show where the crowd would be super feverish for this, like at Bash in Berlin. Bash in Berlin, frankly, is the perfect place to do this, but we've also seen Gunther and Elia Dragonov and NXT UK put on amazing matches and then amazing sequels to that match. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do Gunther Elia Dragonov at Bash in Berlin and then we just have that amazing rematch at WrestleMania. If you haven't seen Walter, that was Gunther's previous name before he came to the main roster in the WWE, versus Elia Dragonov back in NXT UK, I'm telling you, they are back-to-back some of the best matches that have ever been under a WWE umbrella ever. So to get that, but now in giant stages like potentially Bash at Berlin, but what I think should be a massive stage for them at WrestleMania would be kind of perfection, because you can still book the whole show around big narratives and whatnot, but then you can have this one match in the show just be a beautiful showcase of in-ring work. This is just fucking weird. I don't know what I was doing here. All right. I have LA Knight versus Braun Breaker versus Carmelo Hayes. I also have this for the United States Championship in the event that we don't do Logan Paul versus John Cena for the US title. I have this on here because I do see LA Knight being a marquee player for the United States Championship throughout 2024. And I could see a world where he potentially goes into WrestleMania as the United States Champion. And when I look at the field, at the very least, the projected field on Friday Night SmackDown, SmackDown, I see Carmelo Hayes getting drafted there. And of course, we already know that Braun Breaker is there as well. So long as they all stay on the same show after the draft, I could definitely see this as a possibility. Plus, all three of these guys have a history. Of course, Carmelo Hayes and Braun Breaker are like a oil and water situation in NXT, where these guys have been fighting for as long as they've been around. But then we have LA Knight, who was part of NXT Black and Gold versus NXT 2.0, who are these two guys right here personified. Is there a tie right now that could make this happen? Like, can we connect LA Knight to Carmelo Hayes to Braun Breaker? Hell no. But again, we're a whole year in advance. I've only got so much to work with here. If this ends up happening, I need you all to come back to this video and I need you all to kiss my feet, because this would be an insane call. I have another match here that could potentially be for an Intercontinental Championship in the event that it's not Gunther versus Elia Dragonov. I could see a world where we have Andrade taking on Damian Priest for the Intercontinental Championship. The WWE loves their long-term narratives and their long-term storytelling, so it's possible that the current story going on between Judgment Day with Andrade could seep and turn into a long-term feud that involves Rhea Ripley, Charlotte, Dominik, Rey Mysterio, Andrade, Santos Escobar, and it could potentially finally blow up at WrestleMania with a big match between two main event caliber talents vying for a mid-card title in Andrade and Damian Priest. I know that Damian Priest is the World Heavyweight Champion, but sue me, I don't think that he holds for very long. But we know that the WWE loves Damian Priest and they love Andrade enough to put him last minute into an important matchup at WrestleMania, that I could see a world where both of these guys get a big singles match at WrestleMania. I'm sorry to all the Damian Priest fans, but again, I just don't see him holding the World Heavyweight Championship as long as some of these other champions in the past. Let's get funky with it. Let's look at the WWE SmackDown tag titles. I've got the Usos, Jimmy and Jay, at some point in this year reconciling, coming back together and being brothers and becoming tag team champions, going up against the other half of the Bloodline, because I do foresee there being some sort of crazy Bloodline shenanigans. We got Bloodline A versus Bloodline B, but this time they're going to be taking on Solo Sikoa and Jacob Fatu. We know that Jacob Fatu is signed to the WWE. As of the making of this video, he hasn't made any sort of return appearances, promos, nothing. We don't know where Jacob Fatu is going to land within the WWE, but a place that I know he will eventually land in is going to be the Bloodline narrative and the Bloodline story. It would just be ridiculous if he doesn't, really. So yeah, give me this being the year that the Usos reconcile, become tag team champions again, and go into WrestleMania as champions and defend the belts against another evil side of the Bloodline. I'm only putting this on here because I really like the tag team ladder match. I almost want it to become a yearly tradition, like how the Money in the Bank ladder match was a tradition at WrestleMania for a handful of years. Let's bring back ladder to WrestleMania. Let's normalize Carnage at WrestleMania. Let's have another tag team ladder match for the Raw tag team titles. That way you can give 5-6 teams the ability to showcase themselves at WrestleMania. I think it worked incredibly well at this year's WrestleMania, and I would love for them to try it again. This is also a lazy way for me to be able to say that I put the Raw tag team titles on here without any sort of actual thought or booking. But come on, you like the ladder match. I like the ladder match. The world liked the ladder match. So let's see it again. It's a good breakup from traditional long-term narratives. Like, sometimes us wrestling fans do just sort of want to see the world burn real quick. I know that right now the big hype is for CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre, but it's very clear to me that Drew McIntyre is going to be CM Punk's very first feud when he comes back from this tricep injury. Maybe it's as early as Money in the Bank. Maybe it's a matchup at SummerSlam, but I don't think that they're going to be able to drag that out all the way through to WrestleMania 41. However, I do think that WrestleMania 41 is the night that we finally get the match that we were probably originally supposed to get at this year's WrestleMania, CM Punk versus Seth Rollins, probably for the World Heavyweight Championship. I wouldn't be surprised if CM Punk is the World Heavyweight Champion going into this either. Look, we all want this match. They don't need to sell this in any capacity. This was already a matchup that didn't exist, that we were already mouth-watering over just at the possibility of it happening at WrestleMania 40. The guys have a history, they hate each other, and they've all been kind of sharks around the water of the World Heavyweight Championship over the last couple of months. So give this to me. We wanted it this year, but give it to me again at WrestleMania 41. I just need neither of these guys to get injured, please. Our new champion, Cody Rhodes, I do believe will most likely hold this championship all the way through to this year's WrestleMania. I just can't see a nearly 4-year title reign of Roman Reigns ending and then Cody Rhodes immediately losing it within the first 6 months. I think he's going to hold this for a really long time. And it's evident that he is the face of the company. The WWE is going to rebuild this new era around Cody Rhodes. He is the guy that is spearheading this movement for the WWE. I wouldn't be surprised if, yes, he has a match with The Rock somewhere along the way, maybe a rematch with Roman Reigns, but I don't think that The Rock or Roman Reigns are going to be available for this year's WrestleMania, because I think that they're going to have a different match, which we'll talk about in just a second. But when I look at the landscape of matches that are meaningful, that are WrestleMania worthy, that have lineage and history, that are worthy of paying it off at WrestleMania, I can't think of something much better than Cody Rhodes versus Randy Orton. Guys that were a part of legacy, guys whose careers have been intertwined, guys that also come from legendary royal families. And I know that this is a feud that we've all been clamoring for. I know some people are calling it for it to be maybe as early as SummerSlam, and maybe that is the case. Maybe I'm pulling the trigger way too late here, and this match happens much earlier in the year. But if it doesn't happen earlier in the year, I think that this is a perfect place for it, and it's a place in a match that completely warrants the stage of WrestleMania. God damn it, man. The story, the hype packages, this would be iconic. And yeah, I guess I kind of spoiled it. I do think that the main event is inevitably going to be Roman Reigns versus The Rock. This was the match that The Rock originally wanted at WrestleMania 40, and because it's The Rock, he's gonna get what he wants. He's probably still gonna get this at WrestleMania 41. We need this at some point or another. It needs to play out. I wouldn't be surprised if it's The Rock turning on Roman Reigns, because frankly, the only person that is evil enough, that is above the levels that Roman Reigns is above, is The Rock. The only person that can turn Roman face is The Rock. Maybe this comes about because there is a storyline where The Rock turns on Roman Reigns. The Rock tries to take over the Bloodline. We have different versions of the Bloodline. Roman leading one with Jimmy and Jay, and The Rock leading one with Solo Sikoa, Jacob Fatu. Who the hell knows? There's so many different ways that we can get there. All I know is that an inevitable destination is The Rock versus Roman Reigns. And aside from Cody Rhodes, this is the match for The Rock that I want to see. This is the match that I think is worthy of Roman Reigns to come out of his semi-retirement that he seems to be in, to come out and grace us with his presence. This would most likely close out night 2 as well, because it's just such a big match. And I know that a lot of us hated on the possibility of this match happening at WrestleMania 40, but it wasn't because we hated the idea of The Rock versus Roman Reigns. We just hated the idea of it happening at WrestleMania 40 because the timing was off. We all still wanted this match. It was just WrestleMania 40 wasn't the right time for it. WrestleMania 41, on the other hand, absolutely can be. All right, folks, those are my picks. Again, this is way too early. You can feel free to leave your crazy predictions down in the comments down below, and we can all come back and revisit them a year from now. But that's it. I'm done. Get out of here.